A Formula One driver who races through his own streets, a man who can hear the crowd from inside his bedroom, and a Monaco lifestyle so exclusive that most people will only ever see it through a screen. From the apartment that sits meters from the most famous circuit on Earth, to the Ferrari threading through streets barely wide enough to fit it, to the race that means more to Charles Leclerc than any championship ever could. This is not a story about wealth. Every driver on the grid has wealth. This is a story about a man who grew up in the most extraordinary place on Earth and then became the most extraordinary thing in it. Let's get into it. Born into motorsport.
The design is the helmet design my father used to use when he was racing back in the late 80s. It was a dream since child with him to see.
To understand what Monaco means to Charles Leclerc, you have to understand what Monaco meant to the Leclerc family before Charles was famous enough for anyone to care. Hervé Leclerc was a racing driver, not a Formula One driver, but a serious competitor who spent years inside the sport competing in Formula 3 and other categories. Racing was not something the Leclerc household watched on television. It was something they did. It was the language the family spoke before Charles was old enough to speak anything else. If that upbringing had happened anywhere else in the world, it would have produced a boy with an unusual passion for motorsport. But it happened in Monaco, which meant the Formula One circuit was not some distant glamorous thing that existed somewhere else. It was the street outside the front door. Every May the barriers went up on roads Charles walked to school. The grandstands appeared on corners Leclerc knew by name before he knew what grandstands were for. His godfather was 𝐬𝐮𝐫𝐿, one of the most gifted drivers of his generation, a man on the trajectory toward the very top of the sport. If Bianchi had been in any other corner at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix, the story of Formula One in the years that followed might look completely different. But he was in that corner. And Bianchi died in July 2015 from the injuries that resulted. Charles Leclerc was 17 years old and had just lost the man who was supposed to show him how it was done. The loss shaped Leclerc in ways that are still visible today. But the losses were not finished. In 2017, Charles was competing in Formula 2. Standing on the edge of a Formula One debut, carrying everything Bianchi had meant to him and everything his father had built for him. And then Hervé Leclerc died. Charles was 19 years old, racing in the most important championship of his young career, and grieving the man who had made that career possible in the first place. The Monaco apartment. Charles Leclerc lives in Monaco in an apartment that sits minutes from the circuit Leclerc races on every May. If you follow Charles on social media expecting a guided tour of that apartment, you will be waiting a long time. Leclerc is one of the more private Formula One drivers when it comes to personal space. In an era where most athletes monetize every corner of their homes, Charles has chosen to keep the specifics quiet. What occasional glimpses suggest is exactly what you would expect. Clean lines, modern interiors, a building that needs no address explanation to anyone who knows Monaco's geography. But the apartment is not the interesting part. The relationship between the apartment and the circuit is the interesting part. For drivers like Max Verstappen or Carlos Sainz, Monaco is where they live between races. For Leclerc, Monaco is where Charles has always lived. That distinction sounds small. It is not. The circuit does not appear in Leclerc's neighborhood once a year. Charles's neighborhood becomes the circuit once a year. Every corner on that track has a name in Leclerc's memory that predates any lap time. Every barrier goes up on a street Charles has walked without barriers. During Grand Prix week, Charles can hear the support races from inside the apartment. Formula 3 engines echoing off the buildings. Crowd noise building through the weekend. Every other driver on the grid hears that sound and thinks about work. Leclerc hears it, and it sounds like home. The cars and watches. Outside of the Ferrari cockpit, Charles Leclerc's relationship with cars is exactly what you would expect from someone who grew up breathing motorsport and now earns a living at its absolute peak. Ferrari does not simply employ Leclerc. Ferrari considers Charles central to the future identity of the brand. That relationship extends naturally beyond the circuit into what Leclerc drives on the roads between races. Charles has been documented in Ferrari road cars throughout Monaco's streets on multiple occasions. a connection that is as much personal as it is professional. Navigating Monaco in a performance car is its own specific experience. The streets are genuinely narrow, the traffic is real, the gap between the car beside you and the barrier separating you from a 300-foot drop to the harbor is frequently a matter of centimeters. The watch collection tells the same story. The partnership with Richard Mille, one of the most technically complex and financially exclusive watchmakers in the world, reflects a genuine interest in precision engineering rather than a desire to signal wealth for its own sake. Richard Mille timepieces are not fashion objects. They are engineering achievements that happen to sit on a wrist. For someone whose entire professional life is built around the relationship between human skill and mechanical precision, the connection is not a sponsorship, it is a philosophy. The social circle and daily life. Monaco is 2 square kilometers, 38,000 residents. If you do the math on that ratio, what you get is a place where everyone occupies the same streets, the same restaurants, and the same social geography every single day. There is no avoiding anyone in Monaco. But there is also no performing for anyone, because everyone already knows exactly who you are. For Leclerc, that means a social circle built from genuine long-term relationships rather than the proximity networking that defines most cities. Carlos Sainz, former Ferrari teammate and one of Charles's closest friends in the sport, is a Monaco resident. Pierre Gasly has been a friend of Leclerc's since their junior racing days and also lives in the Principality. These are not professional relationships maintained out of convenience. These are friendships built over years of shared experience in a sport that asks an enormous amount of everyone inside it. The extraordinary thing about Charles Leclerc's daily life in Monaco is how unremarkable Charles seems to find it. Not because the life is ordinary, but because it has always been his. The Monaco Grand Prix. Every May something happens to Charles Leclerc's home that happens to no other Formula One driver's home anywhere on Earth. The barriers go up on Leclerc's streets. The grandstands appear on Charles's corners. 78,000 people arrive at the door of the place where Leclerc grew up, and then Charles has to get in a car and race through all of it at 300 kilometers per hour in front of everyone he has ever known. If that sounds like pressure, it is. But it is also something more specific than pressure. The Monaco Grand Prix is the race that existed outside Charles's window before Leclerc knew what Formula One was. It is the race Hervé Leclerc drove Charles to watch as a child. It is the race Jules Bianchi dreamed of winning and never got the chance to. Every other driver on that grid wants to win Monaco. For Charles Leclerc, Monaco is something that cannot be translated into want. It is deeper than that, and Leclerc has never pretended otherwise. Charles has led the Monaco Grand Prix, but leading it and winning it are not the same thing. Strategy calls that became some of the most analyzed decisions in recent Formula One history took victories that should have been Leclerc's. If those decisions had gone differently, the story of Charles's relationship with Monaco would already have its ending. But they did not go differently. And so the story is still being written. What is not still being written is what that race means to Charles on a level that has nothing to do with points or championships. Every other driver arrives in Monaco for race week and checks into a hotel. Leclerc wakes up in Charles's own bed, makes coffee in the Leclerc kitchen, looks out the window at barriers placed on the same street Charles has been looking at his entire life. And then Charles Leclerc goes to work. That is what it means to be Charles Leclerc in Monaco. And there is nobody else on earth who knows what that feels like. Charles Leclerc did not choose Monaco. Monaco chose him first. The lifestyle that surrounds Leclerc now is real. and exists at a level most people will only see from the outside. But none of it is the point. Monaco gave Charles Leclerc his beginning. Everything since has been entirely his own. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe. The next one is already coming.